Hello and welcome to my workshop. So we're getting back on the Dodge M37 build. We made pretty good progress. We want to try to continue on with that. I'll be taking some of these parts, seats and random bits and trying to work on the interior and then getting some other details on here. Possibly the bumpers, but we'll see. Alright, let's get started. So the M37 had a pretty unique set of seats in there. One bucket seat and the other kind of a half or three-quarter bench seat. I'm not really sure what they came out of or if they just came with it, but it looked like it's more of a modern seat. So I kind of looked around my scrap bin, looked around online, and I ended up finding these Jeep JK seats I had. The unfortunate part is I had the one side of one seat and the other side of the other seat in the front. So what I'm doing here is cutting down the seam and gluing two opposite seats back together to make the one seat I needed. So for the both sides, I ended up having to split down the middle and narrow the seats a little bit. Like I said, the bench seat on the side wasn't really a full seat. It wasn't a half seat. It's more like a three-quarter seat. I'm not really sure where it was from. Maybe from like an old van in between the wheel wells or something, but anyway, it was an interesting shape. But I just cut down both sides and got them into the right configuration and kind of put the seats back together. So the bottom of the seats were much easier to work with than the top. They were ABS or some kind of material that is easily glued with solvent, and that's always much easier to work with. The tops were kind of that rubbery plastic, and it's really soft. It cuts really well, but you really just can't glue it back together with anything but like a CA glue or something like that. So I was able to put some backers in there, get some CA glue, and had to do a lot of filling work with the Tamiya fillers to get that seam to be invisible. Where with the bottom, just kind of put it back together, put the solvent glue on, and did some sanding, and it was done. So not impossible to do, but it was just a little more challenging for the tops. So these seats sit up on this raised section, and in the real vehicle it's kind of a stamped steel rectangular box. It has a drop down for the driver's side. The passenger side is a little bit higher, and I basically made something very similar to that out of styrene, and just going to get that placed in with some screws so it can be kind of bolted in and out from the base to make it easier to paint. So here you can see that bottom starting to take shape, and it's not a whole lot of interesting points to this, but there was some dips on the side. Like I said, it was stamped steel, and usually do the stamped steel, you do some type of a bend or something of a contour, and that really does add a lot of rigidity. So instead of making all the pieces individual, I just started adding more pieces on to the outside to give it that look of that it's bent on the inside, even though it's just thicker in places. So the interior has a pretty good start on it, and the bulk of the material is going to be the seat and a seat base arrangement. So this is just a little styrene base that I've made. It's very simple. It's got a little step down here for the driver, and the passenger sit over here. Now the original that I'm modeling this after has a seat for whatever reason with a headrest on this one side, and it's it's two-seater just like this, and then the single more like a front seat, bucket seat. So these are out of a Jeep, and I'm able to cut them down, piece them together, trim off the headrest, trim this headrest off, slice up out the middle, and basically just take those seats and then carve them down and reglue them back together into the shape we have here. And I think they fit pretty well, and they look pretty close to what's in the real truck. So he also has 2 ammo cans, and one is a tall ammo can and one's the shorter ammo can. So I took the axial ammo cans and I extended one of them that fits in the back, and then I have just a regular one in the front, and those are just painted the green to match. So I still have door panels to make on the inside, a transmission hump. The dash here is basically just a flat piece, but there's lots of little detail pieces on there. I have a steering wheel, shifters, and all kind of other items to add. But like I said, a good start to that, and I think I'm just going to continue on with the interior, but I'm going to be shifting gears a little bit to work on the roof section here. So I'm going to try to take this metal and bend some like a hoop that comes around, and then add some styrene on to give it the structure of the frame for the door and possibly the window. Alright, so let's see if we can get that. So I went back and forth with trying to figure out whether we should go with a roll cage or more of the traditional soft top support, which has kind of a thin metal structure and a bunch of stamped steel pieces bolted to it. Ended up going with the traditional structure, but it's kind of the way I ended up building it's kind of modified. Is that there is a pretty decent amount of material that's almost like a roll cage in the back, and the rest is just built off of that. So with the rest of the interior pieces, I also wanted this part to be removable, and so what I ended up doing is just taking some thin brass material I had, and I silver soldered that onto the bottom, drilled 2 small holes, and then I can take some M2 hardware and bolt that thing up through the bottom. As I mentioned, there's a kind of a stamped steel structure for where the door is. There's also a curved part at the top. I ended up going with some brass to come up the sides and down, and then I, kind of just get that whole structure built around in the front. To it's not the strongest thing, but once you connect the front to it and start adding all the pieces up, it really does start to get adds a lot of strength. The hardest part of doing these is getting all the angles and everything just right. And I hate to do this any more than I have to, because it is kind of dangerous, but at this point, to get every angle and every measurement just perfect, I had to pretty much clamp this thing in place with the plastic and just give it a little quick tack of the silver solder so it wouldn't get too hot. Do that all the way around, and then I can pull it off and finish silver soldering without hopefully damaging the plastic by melting it. If you are concerned about something like this where it's connecting, you're doing this kind of same situation, you can take a wet paper towel and basically really soaked paper towel, and just kind of place that right at the base where you're concerned about, and that will generally keep the temperatures down locally where that paper towel is, and but it still allow you to do the silver soldering. So the front windshield I decided to do out of styrene. I figured that would be easier to get built up, and so I'm basically just getting the front windshield set up in place, and that'll be attached permanently to the styrene body, and then the top part, the metal part, will then come off and just key into that styrene. So this topper piece is really starting to come together. There's still quite a bit more to go. But what I've ended up doing is taking some of this stainless steel capillary tubing, and I bent it into shape for this back hoop. and then I took some brass tubing, cut a notch, and silver soldered that onto this piece. Now the tubing runs down to the floor and has little flanges with screws going in to bolt it together to the body, so nice and sturdy back there. And then across the front, I put another brass piece and a little bit thicker piece underneath to give it a little more rigidity there. And what I'm doing is now transitioning to styrene in the front. So what will happen is the styrene is permanently mounted to the body here, which will be the windshield, and then this piece will be able to come on and off. And so it'll be nice to be able to get that in there and add the details and stuff to the interior, be able to put the canvas top on without having to worry about doing it in place. So it should work for a pretty nice setup there. But still a lot more to go, a lot of details to add in here to get this finished up. But I think it's coming along really nice. So let's just continue on. So in the front, I'm basically just adding different pieces on to give it the look of that windshield. And it's not going to be exactly perfect, but it's going to be pretty close. And so I'm just basically just getting a basic structure down and then adding small little pieces here and there to really kind of add in the effect. I'm just taking some thin styrene to get the inner door skin glued in place. So what I ended up doing was taking a thin piece of styrene, I think it was around 10 thousandths or maybe 15 thousandths, and I ran that a little long front and back. And what that'll do is that'll cover the gap up where the body pieces are joined together. And then I put a thicker piece of styrene over the top of that to act as the door card. And so I did have to notch around that where the topper bolts into the back. It's going to be way down in the bottom, so you're not going to be able to see that it's cut out, but it's just easy just to cut a square notch out and have some clearance down there. You're here just getting the edges beveled, or first with the razor knife and then coming back with sandpaper to get it smoothed out, and then essentially just taking these pieces of the pre-made half rounds and different shapes. Some of them I'm making myself, and some of them I'm just using, like say the half round, along with some some 3D printed parts like the door handles and the window cranks, and just getting that built out. So when you're building these pieces like here, you really want to get a lot of good reference material and get the best quality image you can, and just keep zooming in and looking for all these little pieces that a lot of times your eye just skips right over, but like a divot in the metal where a screw would go. You just basically take a little drill and just start a little hole in there, but don't drill all the way through, and it gives you a little divot. So little things like that really help sell this as the real part versus just a flat piece of styrene. So when I first looked at these door panels, I thought I was going to end up making a vacuum form and pulling a vacuum of styrene out of these, but it turned out it was probably easier just to make these from scratch. So this is just a flat piece of styrene, some half round that I bent and glued down. Little shape here that I rounded the corner on. This is a I think it's like a 10,000 thick piece of styrene glued to the top, and a bunch of little resin cast pieces that I put down. I'm still missing 2 here. I ran out and I had to make some more, and I'm missing the door handle. I have the window crank, and you know, I think these turned out pretty good. Like I said, as soon as I get the resin cast, it takes 24 to 48 hours for that stuff to really harden up. So as soon as I get them pulled out of the mold, I'll put in the missing ones, and like I said, when the door handles come in, I'll be good to go. I think I'm going to get on to the dash next, so let's get to that. So I'm working on getting the dash built out, and the dash is pretty simple. It's basically just, you know, a rectangle with a bunch of pieces placed on it. I do have some resin cast hardware, little screws, and I'm taking other thicknesses of styrene and shapes I have, and getting those glued on the front to make up the, you know, the shape of the pieces that are in the dash the best I can. There are some knobs that basically what I'll end up doing is taking a small screw, putting a dab of CA glue on the end, and then shaping that with some sandpaper to make it look like a knob. Then you drill a hole, and it actually turns out pretty fairly well. Again, more pieces just to, you know, give the illusion of like a center console where the gauges are going. So just a thinner piece of styrene glued right on top of the thicker piece, and it gives that, you know, dimensionality you're looking for. I forget what these parts came from, but I think they're from an axial part, but anyway, they're just in my junk drawer, and it looked exactly like the piece that I needed. So I glued that on, drilled a hole out, popped in you know, some of the resin cast hardware. So these were some kind of a little structural support for the dash, and so instead of, I didn't make the entire piece. It does have a little bent kind of a dog leg built into it. So I just ended up taking a thicker piece of styrene, cut a, you know, kind of a triangular shape, and then glued that in place along with some scale hardware, like that resin cast scale hardware. So these are the latches that hold down the windshield when it's vertical, and they go on top of those little plates I glued on earlier, which was kind of the lower structure to hold the you know, the handle in place. So what I did was I started out with a piece of, I think it was a 80 thousandths thick by like 125 or 188 or something like that, but, you know, styrene. I just basically taking a Dremel, and I Dremel the one profile, I Dremel the other profile, and I just keep sanding until I get the shape I want and it looks right. And having it on the end of that piece makes it easier to hold on to and easier to get sanded. Once I get that one done, I just repeat the process for the other side to have it match. I'm pretty happy with how this dash has turned out. There's a lot of little pieces across here, and it really does look pretty close to what the real dash looks like. But the one issue is there's so many variants of these dashes, so many modifications, military versions, but I tried to pick one that was pretty close to what the the one-to-one vehicle I'm trying to match is, and I think this does a pretty good job of it. So we have these latches over here on the side, the glove box. This is the gauge cluster. Now I don't have any gauges obviously, but I'm going to put those on after I paint. So I have I'm basically making some stickers out of just printed paper with clear coat. I might end up going with some kind of resin over top, but we'll see if I go that way or not. A couple toggle switches. I think this is the key ignition. No idea what these things do. I have no idea what that is, but it's a big old knob. These are the latches, like I said, that hold on the windscreen and obviously the steering wheel. So pretty happy with how this has turned out. The one thing that's going to be nice is that I made it so that I can bolt it in. Put this little rail with 4 M2 screws, and I can bolt that in from underneath. So painting and detailing that would be so much easier out of the vehicle. I got a couple more things in the interior I'd like to get done. Alright, so let's get to that. So I ended up buying some 3D printed parts from Shapeways to get some shifters and different parts that I wanted, and these seatbelt latches came along. So I said, why not? I'll put these on. I did have to modify them a little bit. They had the really long between the post where it would mount and the actual latch. So I ended up just cutting that off, drilling a new hole, and then gluing it back into place, much shorter. And then the one for the middle seat, just basically drill a hole and just poke that into it and glue it in place. So the transmission tunnel on the real one is, you can tell it's a custom piece, and so it's interesting. The back part of it is attached, and it has its diamond plate, and then there's a piece right above that, right in front of that I should say, and this is all back by the seat, that is also diamond plate, and then it transitions into smooth material for the rest of it where the shifters are going forward. So I ended up just making a box and adding in pieces to the different angles and curves, and getting it sanded down to the shape I wanted. So I thought about making a form to do a vacuum form of this, but I was trying to think like how long it would take me to make this form and how long it would take me to scratch build it, and I figured it would be about the same. If I ever do build this again, I probably would have liked to have the form, but I just said, you know what, I'm really enjoying the scratch building, so I just went ahead and went that route. We just get a couple holes drilled and drop those 3D printed shifters in place. I'm missing one shifter here, but I have that on order, and hopefully it'll be here soon. As mentioned, it had a diamond plate on the back side, so I ended up having a little piece of scratched diamond plate, so I put that in. It really does look good. So I think we're at a pretty good stopping point for this video. We've got a lot accomplished here, and I'll just go over that real quick. First, I'm going to take these little shifters out. They're just resting in there. I still have one more shifter to go. That's on order. Three small shifters on the right hand side, and then one down the center, the bigger shifter. What we were able to do is take some, I believe they were the JK seats. So I have the rear seat. It's cut down the middle, pieced together, removed one headrest. I took the driver's seat, ended up piecing it together because we just had pieces of that, and cut this whole thing down, made a custom box for it to mount to, and then took some ammo cans from Axial, and one of them has been extended to make it a taller ammo can, and the other one's a standard height. And this is pretty much exactly how the one-to-one truck is set up. He has very similar seats, and he has this exact same ammo can set up. We have the dash and with the steering wheel and all the little knobs on there. Now we still got to come back and paint all the details in, put in the gauges and a lot of the other stuff like that. But I think for the most part that's there. You know, the windscreen and the I guess it's the structure for the canvas top is all done. Now this is metal here, and this goes into styrene here. We have door panels that aren't really door panels. I guess technically this is just metal skin, part of the inside of the door, but I added in some detail to make it look like the inside of the door. I do have window cranks, but the door handles they're on order. Hopefully they'll be here soon. Not sure how well you can see it, but there's a transmission cover down here, and it's very interesting because the one he has is a custom piece he has made, and it looks like he has some scraps of diamond plate in the rear, and the front is smooth. So I've replicated that with some diamond plate in the rear and smooth styrene in the back. There's a little piece in between where you can see he flanged the two together with some bolts. And I have, again, bolts down the side. So trying to replicate this as much as possible. The body is now mounted on, and it's a pretty solid. It's bolt through the front right here. 2 bolts to hold it in the cab to the bed, and then the bed is bolted down in through the battery box. A lot of good progress. Still a long ways to go. I'm thinking the next thing we'll end up doing is getting some of the details finished up on the bed, and possibly bumpers and the grill. Got a very iconic grill, goes out toward here. But that'll be in the next video. So looking forward to some other projects, some other things coming up. Until then, we'll see you on the rocks.